The growth isn't just for business. What I've learned through the mentorship is that your personal growth allows for business growth. If you as the leader are not personally growing, how can you lead your business to growth? And I'd probably say that's the key thing that I've learned in the last year and a half.
Engineering Success will feature engineering and industrial leaders chatting candidly about their journey to long-term success, the challenges encountered, the lessons learned, and the solutions put in place. You'll hear actionable insights from peers on how they established strong company cultures, systematized operations, leveraged sales and marketing to consistently generate customers, overcame financial challenges, faced increasing competition, and adapted to change to manage growth. Today's guest is Michael Jones, the founder of Jones Structural Engineering, a Sydney-based structural consultancy focused on low to mid-rise residential and commercial developments. Michael's engineering career started in 2018 with a paid internship, and while he was still completing his university degree, he began working part-time. He then graduated in 2020 and spent the next few years building his expertise across low to mid-rise residential and commercial projects in Sydney, before backing himself and launching Jones Structural Engineering in 2023. In the years since, he's developed a reputation built on genuine long-term client relationships, a solution-first mindset, and a belief that adding value matters more than chasing fees. Now he's navigating the next challenge, building a team of consultants around him to keep up with growing demand without compromising the quality his clients have learnt to expect. Michael, welcome to the Engineering Success Podcast, and thank you for joining us today.
G'day, Rick. Thanks for having us. Keen to have a chat, mate.
You spent a few years working after you graduated with other firms. I assume that was building your skills, building a network of contacts. And then in 2023, you started your own practice. What was the final push that made you back yourself and open your own firm?
My uncle's a builder. I was on and off helping him with different projects. His good friend is actually the director of a mechanical engineering firm who was growing himself and branching out to different building services. Every single time I saw him, he would say, go start your own. I couldn't believe he was asking me this because everyone in the industry was saying, you need 5 years, 10 years experience. You need to be chartered. You need to have all the ducks lined up in a row before you're ready to go out on your own. That's what I heard and that's what I thought was right. But he was really encouraging me or pushing me to just make the jump. He just kept saying, no, you'll figure it out. You'll get the registrations. You'll get the different things you need along the way as they pop up. Not too sure what made me make the jump, but I went on a holiday and came back without a job and started my own business.
So your back was against the wall. What happened there?
Not so much back against the wall. I've been toing and froing with different ways to start my own business. The current employment that I was in at the time, there wasn't really any future there, especially based in the Sydney office. I could just see issues with things that I'd come through in the years before and things that I really wanted to work on and fix within the industry. So I quit my job, went on a month-long holiday and actually finished my first job while I was overseas. Crazy ride of events and a roller coaster. It was a good decision.
The people around you, friends, family, obviously from the industry, you're getting that advice that you need everything lined up before you take the plunge. But how did the people out of the industry, friends and family, how did they respond, and were they supportive or were you really rowing against the tide?
Was a very big divide between two groups of people. You had a large conglomerate of people saying, this is a big risk. You're early in your career. You could stuff up the rest of your life doing this. You could go into a lot of debt, all this sort of stuff. And then there was the other side of people who came from a background of their entire family running businesses. And they were just like, oh, great. This is a great move, mate. I hope it goes all well for you. Give me a call if you need a chat or help. There's this big divide between your typical thought process of going to uni and having a career until you're 65. And the other thought process of, well, the best way to do this is a business. And you have no idea what you're doing, but go have a red hot crack at it.
I would argue at that point in all of our lives, assuming you didn't have children and stuff like that, the risk is actually pretty minimal. You could not make it work, but you can always go and get another job. It's much harder to always go out and start a business.
Well, with engineering consultancies, there's actually zero startup cost. The only cost you really need is insurance. And the rest of it is maybe softwares, but you don't need to get them all at once. I had very little responsibilities. I was single, no kids. Very easy point in my life to get started.
We'll come back to that point of it's easy to start, because the other side of that, without any cost to get into it, creates no barriers to competition.
Correct. Yes.
base to work and to build a model around that is probably an area where we'll dive into. You've talked about wanting to add value rather than just make money. And again, when you're young, you can have that attitude and that belief, but still it's a big call. Even if somebody's trying to build out their career and trying to build a business. Where did that philosophy come from? Because it's definitely counter to most perspectives. Was that something that you got from your family? Was it the uncle or the mentor that you were working with?
It's definitely the mentor that I'm working with. I'm a part of a mentorship team of 100 to 200 people. We all connect and work together, and we're all underneath one mentor who's got great experience in business and entrepreneurship. It was his recommendation and the team's way of thinking of going out there and listening to audios and reading books and diving into that space. Took me across a book by Napoleon Hill called Think and Grow Rich. The thing that I pulled from was your mindset is to go out there and try to chase a project or chase the invoice. People are going to run the opposite direction because they see that all you want to do is transact. If you go out there to see someone's problem, understand their perspective, and want to add value that solves that problem, they will pay you as much as they can for that solution because they know that they can't do it and you're helping them do it, and they would like to thank you for it. People can suss you out within 2 seconds and your mindset comes to the surface very quickly without you saying anything. It was important for me to approach people and approach businesses in the way of, I'm here to just listen to what you have and find ways that I can add my unique experience or insight. And if that helps you solve it, then let's talk the cash afterwards.
Where that philosophy hits the road and is really challenged is when cash is tight and you're trying to desperately win work or a client pushing you on budget. Can you think back to the few years you've been running the business where you actually had to double down on that philosophy and you've either said no to projects or to working with a specific client because of a difference in perspective on the role of finances and the financial philosophy you've got?
It's actually a good timing because I'm going through a bit of that right now in the sense of I'm chasing a certain type of client. I've just realized that a lot of the clients that I started with, I have no relationship with anymore. Now, that's not a good or bad thing. It's just that you are changing your approach from when you first started and were a sole trader. And because your mindset's shifting, the type of client that you're working with also shifts from the client who is trying to get everything out of you for the least amount to the client who is trying to work with you and resolve an issue before we even talk dollars. Just trying to mesh that all together in the right way where, yes, we need to make money. That's the point of business, right? We also need to do it in a way that has a lasting effect and an impact that our kids can enjoy. I don't know about you, but I love driving past the construction site or a finished project and telling the person in the car, hey, that's something I worked on.
Yeah, I know that joy. Have you walked away from opportunities because there was a misalignment on where value is and they were looking for rock bottom? And the standard example is where somebody's pushing you down on price and you're trying to bring value to the table. And ultimately, the margin is left that there's no margin left for you. So I'm just trying to push a little bit harder because, it's great to have a philosophical perspective, but they only work when you actually have to follow.
There was a project where they built the house. There was some breakdown with the original engineer and they came to us through a referral because they wanted to build a pool and a cabana and a steps retaining wall. It's just probably on the smaller side of things, but still the trickiness was there was an existing sewer Sydney Water asset. I gave them a fee knowing the complexities that are around the Sydney Water guidelines. And they basically said, that's how much I paid for the house design. Can you do half? And I said, nope, I can drop it maybe 100 or 200. And they said, what if we did cash? And I was like, yeah, go find someone else. I don't need that anymore. I'm not chasing quantity. I'm chasing quality.
Yeah, that's a great one. And it aligns with one of my philosophies around knowing the types of clients that you don't want to work with is sometimes more valuable knowing who you want to work with. And I don't mean the size or demographic style, but attitudinal stuff. So somebody who's going to come with that sort of offer, you're going to struggle later on when things get difficult.
Yeah, for example, right now we've been called onto a job because a project has been fully installed and ready for OC, and they've got to OC and realized the previous engineer didn't have registration and no one checked. Lo and behold, we come to site and firstly, there's things that have been installed that are opposite to the shop drawings. And secondly, the shop drawings haven't been designed to the right level of quality.
Thanks for that. Typically, when you start a business, you may have 1 or 2 projects, but it's difficult to get people over the line to trust and believe in you as a startup entrepreneur. Did you have mentors from the very beginning of the business and people that supported you and gave you that belief and the crutch to stand on? If so, how did they actually do that? And what sort of support and help did you get from mentors around you?
My current mentors weren't around. I only met them about 1.5 years ago. So when I first started, I literally Hand on heart, I had zero support in any sort of professional or personal background. I grew up with a very great work ethic. I'm naturally ambitious. I see the big picture, I see the big dream, and I'm willing to work to get it. I remember the first days of the starting of the business, I put aside 2 hours a day to just cold call, cold email, do research for websites, try to find a connection through that connection that I already have. That went for a solid 3 or 4 months at the start, at least, because we know our industry builds over word of mouth. You go out there with cold calls and cold emails, then you try to make that convert into a job, and then you try to convert that into a repeat client, and you try to get that to be spread to other of their colleagues. The thing that's mainly changed now is when I do reach out to a new colleague, it's actually most commonly not random online. It's through a network event. It's through a referral. And if it is random online, let's say through LinkedIn, I don't talk any shop or any project based until I have a coffee and just get to know them. And I think that starting meeting of just getting to know one is the most important aspect of any relationship.
I agree. And is that an approach that you've developed since joining your mentoring group?
It's kind of been a morphing point. I was starting to get that idea that this isn't working. This random chasing for, hey, do you have a job for me? Wasn't really working. You'd probably get 1 out of 20 conversions because someone at that time was desperate in need for a good engineer. It was slowly morphing towards, well, I don't actually care if I get a job from you. I just want to have a connection with you. And if it goes somewhere, it goes somewhere. You may not have something for me, but based off the connection that we have and the genuine enjoyment you have through our conversation, you might know of someone else who has a job that they need. So yes, I strongly believe our industry is all about our connection. And my go-to motto nowadays is your network is your net worth. That is how much I value my business based on how many connections I have. And if you ask any of my friends or any of my regular clients, they can call me straight away and ask for a random referral or a random type of consultant, and I most likely will have someone in my back pocket.
We've our own little meme for that sort of perspective. We talk about people buy from people they like and trust. Before they buy, they need to make sure they like you and trust you. And that coffee meeting is all about that.
Business is built at the speed of trust.
Correct. You've mentioned that you're in a networking group. Can you tell us about the group? What's one of the core values that being in a mentor group has given you? And can you relate that to either a client you've won or an approach you've taken on a project?
The mentorship group is called Gen Next. Very small mentorship group. I've been to multiple networking businesses or networking events run by different companies, organizations. I had my own little personal coach who I was paying a few $100s every single session for a coffee. And the biggest difference that I saw between what I've seen in the past and what I have now is that in the past, you pay cash up front and you get a bit of advice and then it's up to you to implement it. Whereas this mentorship is no cash up front and it's a 24/7 WhatsApp group of advice and helping you implement ideas and not just leaving you high and dry after the coffee catch up. Having a room that we meet on a fortnightly basis where we can all share our ideas and we can all learn how to grow. Now, this is the important thing as well. The growth isn't just for business. What I've learned through the mentorship is that your personal growth allows for business growth. If you as the leader are not personally growing, how can you lead your business to growth? And I'd probably say that's the key thing that I've learned in the last year and a half.
I assume that comes out in the way you approach having conversations with people and building long-term relationships. Can you cite an example of how you've changed through your own reflection and growth and how that impacted the business?
It comes down to how I relate to people. I, as an engineer, am a very formulated person and I like to have a transaction with you. So 9 times out of 10, I would have only talked to you if I could get something from you and vice versa. I've learned business is relational. A prime example would be going to a network event. When I go now, the conversation has nothing to do with engineering. The conversation has to do with you and your background and your family and what beer are you drinking. It doesn't matter about work. If work pops into it, it pops into it and we talk shop, but it's definitely not the lead conversation starter. Whereas 2 years ago, that would have been entirely different. And I would not have had the confidence or the skill to talk about things other than work.
We all know that repeat clients are the holy grail of firm, that more often it's about trying to win more work with our current clients than necessarily bringing in a new client. That partly because they're proof that people trust you enough to come back. It's a very competitive environment. And often what we see is that great engineering isn't enough to ensure repeat work. That there's lots of great engineers out there. And you've talked about you want to build long-term relationships with your clients. If you agree that it's not just about doing great work, what is it that you do beyond making sure you deliver a great product that actually helps build that long-term relationship?
One of the ethos or the cornerstone that I build my business on is a 24-hour response time and a constant communication. I've had clients in the past that I no longer work with will just do what they feel like without giving me a call, or they feel like I'm going to not give them a solution based on what they want to do. For me, it's regular communication. I may not have had a job with you for 6 months, but that doesn't stop me from grabbing a coffee or giving you a phone call, or just, in a sense, reminding you that I exist. Sometimes I might just sit at my desk and go through my phone and just, oh yeah, that person, I'll give them a call and see how they're going. The same approach would occur in LinkedIn messages. Before, you'd just be trying to see how you can sneak your way into someone's list of consultants. Whereas now you're just, oh, you've changed jobs. How's it going? Love to hear about it. And that's it. On a practical day-to-day basis, I could definitely do more of it. When it gets busy, that's normally the thing that goes first. But yes, I do try to just simply stay connected.
I agree. You definitely need boundaries, and those boundaries for clients, for yourself, and for your team as well. You mentioned earlier around being solution orientated, and you described that previously for me as, being solution orientated is not problem fixated. Can you explain what that actually means, especially when you've either got a client who goes, no, just tell me what to do, or you're on a tough project? Is there an example where that approach has come through that can highlight how you think about problems?
This more relates to people that work for me, that I'm giving work to and I'm giving a task to, but also it does relate to my clients. I do quite a bit of steel work, steel shop drawings, and working with the client when inevitably a site restraint comes up or someone stuffs up. You've got to figure out on the fly another way to do it. I've found a lot of great engineers who are really good at their numbers cannot think outside the box to say, I found that it doesn't work. So what do I do now? Lots of engineers will just run the numbers and yep, that detail that's proposed doesn't work. And they just stop there. I'm like, well, you haven't done anything then. You haven't provided any sort of value to the client. You've left them to solve it and then get you to check. And then the cycle starts again. For the people who work for me, I say to them, if I need to go back to the client with a solution, you need to come to me with a solution. And if you're not sure which solution works best, then come to me with 3 different solutions. And I like to do that with my clients as well. The number one thing I would like to do is if I see a problem, I want to give them option A and B as a minimum. That just shows the client that I'm going above and beyond just running the numbers. I've taken the project's entire perspective on board, and I understand the ins and outs of that project. I want to really help them solve it. A classic example would be doing an extension of a church currently. The internal frame of the building is basically being gutted and we're reframing the whole thing, but we're keeping the roof off. So there's a bit of complexities there. The architect wants to help me and make my job easy and has left a few posts in the floor area. If I'm a good engineer, that's what I design. Done deal, get my invoice paid. But I immediately thought, well, if we were to remove both of those posts, you would have a much better flowing floor area for the occupants of the house. Have we considered this? I asked the architect. They said, well, can you do it? Sent them an email with a markup within half an hour. Right now, they're still processing it, but I think they were taken a bit back that I went above and beyond to go outside my job description and play architect for a little bit. This kind of ties back to my dream of hopefully one day having an office which is architect and engineer shared space, or architect, builder and engineer all working together. I know it's been trialed and tested in the past and it's sometimes failed, but I think it's possible in the right mindset.
A model that I like to use for that, because as you've alluded to, the best is to train our staff to have that attitude. The model of 1-3-1. They always come with one problem, training staff to come back with 3 solutions and then 1 recommendation from that. So they're good at the 1. You can train them on the 3, but then you want to get them to get to the 1 because that then builds them to be independent.
Typically, they get to the 1 and now I want them to come back with the 3 because I want to have a conversation with them about what do they believe is the best one at the end. I fully agree with that approach.
Yeah. When they have a conversation, they build confidence in their mind that they've got the capability to find the solution, and for you that they can do it. They do that a few times and then you go, don't worry about coming to me, you've got this.
Yeah, it works both ways.
The business is a few years old, as I've said earlier, and your model is around building a team of consultants that we'll come to in a moment. But there must have been a point in the business, and it might have been very early on, when you realized that either there's only 24 hours in the day and you can't bill yourself out for that, and that's going to be a limitation, or you just had so much work on that you needed another person to help you carry it through. What was the moment for you when you realized you can't do this alone, you can't build what you're trying to do it alone? Then what did you do about it? How were you thinking about it, and how did you go about solving that dilemma?
It wasn't actually a moment, it was a decision. The reason I started my own business was to have freedom and not to be a slave to my clients. In your own business, you're excited, and then you realize, oh, I'm a sole trader. And if I don't keep my clients happy, I don't make money and I don't have freedom. I quickly realized that I've got a 10-year goal of having a business that has systems that can run without me physically being there. I can't do that with just myself. And so it was a decision to say, well, if I want to achieve this dream of not being working for the next 40, 50 years, then I need to have trusted people around me that I can rely on, that can rely on me. We can share the load and all make money together. Because the thing I did realize is that you become stagnant very quickly as to how much you can make and how much influence you can provide if you're just doing it by yourself in a 24-hour day.
How early on did you start bringing on people to help you, and was it just another engineer that you could, that your level to do the work you did? Was it a person? Was it a draft person? Talk us through the types of people you started bringing on, and we'll dig into the model that you're using today in a moment.
The first person I brought on was a drafter because I quickly realized that my time is not worth drawing lines. I learned that from my previous employers. They outsourced their drafters quite regularly overseas, and I could see the benefit of that. I also saw the breakdown of that because it wasn't very clear communication, and you ended up wasting more times on markups than actually getting the job out. There was a balance there I needed to strike between having someone I had to pay a lot in-house to someone who I could outsource and managing the communication expectations. After that, I went on another holiday to New Zealand and was reading a book called 10x is better or greater than 2x. That revolutionized my thinking because I realized as a business owner, 80% of my time should not be in the design work. It should be in the business growth. If I'm not doing the design work, I need someone else to do that. That really changed how I approach things, but I also didn't have the capital to go out there and hire a junior engineer or a mid-engineer. I didn't want the risk of hiring someone and then not having the guaranteed workflow coming in and a 3-month pipeline coming in. I started working with sub-consultants or subcontractors on hourly rates or agreed rates and getting them involved when I had a project that required that person. And it wasn't just one individual. It was a list of about 10 or 15 different subbies that I had met over the years. I trusted these people with the certain skills that they had. I was very particular which jobs I sent to who. I definitely want to start hiring people at the right time, but that approach has definitely allowed me to grow to the next level. Every business goes through levels. That's how we got to where we are now.
For reference, the 10x is greater than 2x is written by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. If you like coaching, Dan Sullivan's got lots of books on strategic coaching because that's who he is. Having consultants is great because you can obviously access the skills you need. You can only pay for it as you need it, and you can often get a better skill than you could necessarily afford if they were going to be a full-time employee. On the downside, you've got less control of the work. You can't necessarily maintain the quality in the same way you could as if they were on staff. So in the context of those challenges, how are you, finding the right person? Because this isn't just that you like and trust them. You've actually got to check the quality of their work before they do the first job in some ways. Mm-hmm. And then throughout that process, how are you maintaining the quality work without then rebriefing them and then having to spend double the hours?
It's two-pronged. One is I am very particular with who I choose to work with. I would trust them to the point that if I wasn't around and they were liaising directly with the client and I had no sort of peer review going on from myself, that they would issue the project to the same quality as if I was there. There's a lot of trust involved. At the same time, we still have regular communication. The thing I keep saying to them is if you have a question, don't wait until you've done a design and then pop the questions in a markup and send it back. Just call me, just message me, and let's solve it as you're doing it. I might not respond within a few hours, but I would prefer you to be fully aware of what's going on and in control of your time and not just sitting back and wasting it and hoping and that what you've done is the right approach.
Was there anything that surprised you in terms of using consultants as a way to augment your team?
There's two sides of this. One side, there was a few of my consultants who surprised me where they were very willing to just have a conversation, maybe even an hour conversation on the phone, tossing ideas around, and they don't send me an invoice. In the sense, because I think maybe they know there's more work coming because I can help them out and I would do the same for them if they wanted to have an hour phone call. That's a good side of it. And then the flip side of it is you've done work with this person in the past. They've produced pretty good results, but the more I've done with them, I've realized that their mindset is just to copy line for line what's being drawn or word for word what's being typed. And there's no desire to understand the project holistic. I try to dive into a project's own type and to understand the whole thing from all different angles. I expect that the same with people that I work with. You come at loggerheads when you're trying to understand the whole thing and also expecting someone else to do it, but all they're doing is only what is shown on the drawing and that's it. I have a rule where there's three strikes where if I've explained something to you or if I've specified something, this is the approach that we're taking in the future. This is the mindset that we have. You ask me the same question twice or you go against that ethos or you simply can't be bothered to understand a project, then I'm sorry, but I don't work with those people. It just boils down to if you don't share the same ethos as I do, then it's not really going to work. That's the same if I was hiring someone. If you don't mingle with the rest of the office in the way that is expected, then there's the door. Any business needs to have a common way of thinking and working for it to be in harmony.
I think the way I would relate that back is that any business that is worth its weight is driven by a set of values and beliefs. And we've talked a lot about your values and beliefs. And these aren't, we believe in treating our clients well. When values are mindset and belief driven, if your consultants aren't solution focused and coming back to you, challenging the way you've thought about the project, then they're not adding value. There's no point paying the premium that you're probably paying if that's all they're doing. You could find somebody in a cheaper market to do that.
I don't think I recognized this at the time, but right at the start of my career, even as an intern, there was this particular drafter who I was working with in that business to actually understand the project and even come up with an engineer design connection and go back to the engineer who he was working with and say, look, I know you gave me this markup. I know you want me to draft it, but looking at it, I think it's going to clash or I think it could be better done this way. I remember as a 20-year-old freaking out. I don't want to do anything wrong. Just feeling the tension in the room between a drafter who's going beyond what he's supposed to, an engineer dropping his ego and accepting, oh, that actually does work. Those two people working together. It only comes from those two people trusting and not trying to one-up each other.
It's not about ego. It's about the best result for the client. Slightly different in your story. I find that most engineering firms are almost what I'd call accidental business owners. They're working somewhere. One of their clients says, hey, I could do this with you direct. I'll happily give you some work. So they go out on their own and then they need more, a bit like you. I need more help to get this job done. And then suddenly they're no longer an engineer. They're managing finances. They're managing relationships. They're dealing with bad debt, all of these things that are almost an afterthought. But on the flip side, again, the way you've expressed your thinking, or at least it may have developed more succinctly over the last couple of years, but you clearly didn't go into this with rose-colored glasses. You've come in and at least now, if not at the beginning, trying to set up much more financial discipline and much more focused rigor on client, etc. Looking at that financial aspects of the business, how have you approached a financial discipline to grow your business and look at when you can afford to bring on resources, rent office space, rather than just going randomly realizing, oh my God, I've just signed a contract for a property for a period. How have you been more disciplined in thinking about the financial aspects of your business?
You're spot on about you start as an engineer and then you suddenly turn out to be a business manager and all the soft skills being a business manager has nothing to do with engineering. And then you suddenly realize, oh, when was the last time I practiced that design check? So definitely, in a sense, losing, in quotation marks, the engineering hard skills that you did at uni. But yes, from a financial thing, the moment where I thought, hey, this might be possible to go out on my own, I was leading a small team, I'd say 2 engineers and 3 drafters in my previous employer. Because I had a team, it was actually turned out to be like a competition between teams. And so we had access to the finances of the company, always about trying to out-hit the KPI of the other team. And I figured out that in the space of 6 weeks, my team made the company $300K of profit. and my salary didn't change. I was like, well, I could do this on my own and make 300K myself. You jump into it, you don't have an accountant, then you do have an accountant, and then you get a PTY LTD, and then you get a really good accountant and you get zero, and then you start learning what reconciliation is and all the rest of it. I love tracking numbers. I love seeing growth. And so my motto was always, I need to be making more than the previous month. Or if I don't do it that month, in the space of 3 months, we need to have grown in some sort of way. The minimum profit I wanted to make had to exceed what I would make as a employee at the same point in my career. I always liked to look at my profit and loss statements. I always wanted to see that we were making money. I always was checking my profit margin. I wanted to be at least 50%. Most consultancies out there around the 30% profit margin. I know that as I grow, it's harder and harder to stay up at that 50%. I like tracking it. I think Xero is a fantastic tool to understand where your business is growing, how it's dipping, the trends in the year. January is normally super quiet. April's normally super quiet. Then there's a big ramp up for the end of the financial year. There's a big ramp up before Christmas. I love seeing trends. I love following patterns.
When you look back over the last few years of going out on your own, have there been any painful lessons from a financial management oversight perspective that have taught you really where to keep your eye on?
I learned the hard way to not release drawings and certificates before being paid. As engineers, we actually have a very nice tool at our disposal, which is, here's your drawings. Oh, you want a certificate? Well, pay the invoice first. We're very lucky where we have that safeguard in place. From a pure financial perspective, forgetting to grow or to connect, you've got a lot of work on. You've got 15, 20 projects going at once. You're doing your to-do list and you realize, oh, by the end of this week, I won't have any more projects because I haven't stuck to my 3-month pipeline and keeping that flowing and keeping that building. I think the 3-month pipeline is really important to me because without that, you don't have cash flow. I've seen firsthand what happens with cash flow. That same uncle I was talking about at the start, he went bankrupt and his business is no longer there because simply of cash flow. Had a particular client with multiple projects going at once. That particular client had an issue on one of those projects and therefore subsequently took out all 6 projects mid-project and didn't pay anything. Ruined cash flow. To keep afloat, my uncle takes out a construction loan, thinking he can rebounce, he can get back up there, starts to get back up there, and then is subbing to a larger builder for a larger project. That builder verbally asks him to do some variations. And then when he does them and sends the invoices, says, where's the email to approve this? And then doesn't pay. For me, our industry is a big game in a sense. We're just constantly cat and mousing each other. Cash flow is really important, which is why the 3-month pipeline is really important.
One of the challenges that we often hear and see is what we like to call the peaks and troughs of business development. That you look at that pipeline, you go, oh, it's not quite where I need to be. So you double down on, as you say, flipping through your phone and calling people, setting up coffees, and then that builds out a pipeline. But then you just go through, now you flat chat work. Is that a similar scenario?
As you go through phases of bringing on people, needing work, but then needing to help the people you brought on to get the work done. So yes, I'm fully aware of this trough and this roller coaster that happens. To be honest, I don't have the answer right now. I know there's an answer out there of how to do that, but I'm very aware that I need to minimize that trough as much as possible.
There's no easy answer. There's a simple answer. It's not an easy answer. The simple answer is you can't ever take your eye off business development. The time to do it is when you're busy, not when you're quiet.
Yes. Sure.
Because when you're quiet, your back's against the wall and you might need to make decisions that counter to the beliefs.
Which goes back to having people that you can trust to do the work for you so that you don't feel the pressure of make sure the work's done so that you can continue to focus on the business growth. That's where business partnerships come in. That's where sub-consultants become employees. And I just feel like right now for our business particularly, we're in a stage where we're just figuring out which direction we're going to make that the best outcome.
The other simple, again, not easy, but simple situation for especially young consulting firms like yours is the objective is to do larger projects that are more valuable. And the more small ones you do, and don't get me wrong, you can build a business beautifully on lots and lots and lots of small projects. Generally, the approach of how do I have more valuable client for longer and doing bigger projects gives you that broader stability rather than having to chase your monthly overhead.
I agree with that. The smaller the project, the quicker it is to race to the bottom in the terms of the revenue and the everything else. For me, my target right now, which I've figured out in the last few years, is to try to win your below 10 stories, but above 2 stories, that sort of boutique residential, commercial, warehouses, that sort of thing, because you're not dealing with a massive overseas developer and you're not dealing with mom and dad at home. You're dealing with people who do have a budget, do have certain targets they're trying to hit, but are also trying to achieve a unique and aesthetically pleasing project and want to work with people who have quality in the center of their mind.
The other side of that, if you work in a very defined space, as you say, the below 10 and above 2, you can build out expertise in that area and you can be the go-to person to do that, which then allows you to also charge a premium because you're one of a small group of people that do a specific area rather than lots of structural engineers. Yeah, we could do this or we could do that.
Yeah.
But no,
Yeah.
we only do this.
You got to choose your niche for sure.
Correct. And there are lots of different ways to think about that niche. You're obviously about 3-4 years into your business. You've got visions of where you're trying to get it to. You talked earlier about that combined office with an architect and a builder and an engineer in the same business. But if you were 10 years ahead, if it was 2036 and you're about to come to the end of that financial year and you look back and go, wow, that was really successful. Jones Structural Engineering's had the best year ever. What would that look like? What's the 10-year vision of where you want to get Jones Structural Engineering to?
I do have different dreams that I think somehow will mingle together. One is obviously not to be the sole director of the business. I don't think you can properly grow as a sole director because you don't have people that you can trust. I'd love to be in some sort of partnership. At the same time, I don't want to be doing engineering for the rest of my life. I want to be doing something in the property development game, something in the land division game that relates to engineering, but is not solely engineering. 2036, I would have loved to have seen the Brisbane Olympics, to have some sort of influence in that, in whatever perspective that means. But yes, I definitely don't want to just be sub-consultants anymore. I want to be employees. I want to have partners and even greater list of people that I'm regularly connecting with. I definitely want to be off the tools. I don't want to be doing numbers or anything. The downplay I think that's coming is that if you're not doing the technical skills, then you're going to have to be across the compliance, legal, paperwork side of things, which I don't think anyone enjoys.
We've talked a lot about your philosophical beliefs in terms of how you want types of customers you want, how you want to build the business. In 10 years' time, what would make you feel like you've built something that really matters?
But something I talk with my mentors quite a bit. We believe a business is only truly a business if you can be not present for a minimum of 6 months and it still make profit. To me, that would mean having a size of team that everyone knows what they're doing, everyone knows the system that they're following, and everyone has the confidence to make decisions that they won't get yelled at. If they stuff up, they will actually solve. We're not going to make a problem or get to a point and be unhappy and just leave the client high and dry and run off. You won't get to a system point if you do that mindset. I want to have partners where, let's say there's 3 partners. One of those partners can be, in a sense, doing something else or on a holiday a part of the year, and we go on a cycle, because there's a relationship there where even if you're not in the office, you're still fielding phone calls and emails, and you're still growing the business from a management perspective, but you don't need to be in the office babying the employees to do the right thing. Obviously, there's a lot of training that goes involved and you've got to keep people in line and whatever. And I haven't understood that yet. But yes, from a bigger perspective, I see myself in 10 years at the point where I don't need to be in the office for 6 months because I have people that I trust to make things happen.
That brings us all the way back to where we almost started, which is ultimately you've got a team of people who are solution focused and will work the problem to come up with the best solution rather than just fix it immediately for a client.
100%.
Thank you, Michael, for being so open about the journey of building Jones Structural Engineering and for being honest about what it's really taken, not just providing highlights and making it all beautiful and glossy. What stood out for me from our conversation is that success hasn't come from doing more, as we talked about. It's from being deliberate and intentional and really being focused on the right sort of client and bringing the right solution to the table.
And I would just add to that, having the right people around you. The power of association is a huge thing. So having the 5 right people around you really affects how you relate and who you relate with and where you're aiming, because all those 5 people are trying to go in the same direction.
Correct. It's about being deliberate with the clients you work with, the staff you ultimately employ, and the people that are around you that are giving you advice. Because as you've highlighted, it's the relationships you build that will create the type of business that you want Jones Structural to be, which is a much harder path than just taking every job and hoping that you'll get through and you'll achieve your ambition. So I really thank you, and I think our listeners will respect that perspective quite enormously. So once again, thank you for taking the time to join me today.
No, thank you, Rick. It's much appreciated, and I'm more than happy to have a chat. And I actually think the more chats that we have like this encourage other people to do the same thing, because we all know the best way to grow is to have your own business, in my perspective. So thank you again.
Pleasure. And to all our listeners, if you've enjoyed today's conversation and something's resonated you, I'd love to hear from you. Feel free to connect with me or with Michael on LinkedIn, and visit engineeringsuccess.com.au to listen to previous episodes and find out about our networking lunch series that we run as well. And if you are a leader in an engineering or industrial business and you're navigating the same sort of challenges that Michael described today, whether it be building a team, holding on to your best clients, to staying true to why you started the business, you're not alone. And that's exactly what this podcast is here to show. So thank you again. I'm Rick Merton, and thank you for listening to Engineering Success.